Welcome to the Wellness with Delaney podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Maria Marlowe. She's the founder of KUMA, a probiotic company, and an acne nutritionist. Today, we are going to chat all about beautiful skin and how you can eat your way to a gorgeous, glowing complexion. Maria, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm super excited. I've been dying to chat with you. So let's start super basic because I know we have people from all different walks of life listening to this show. So, what is the gut biome?
The gut microbiome is made up of different bacteria and even viruses, different microorganisms that actually support our health. So they help with our digestion, they help with our immune system, and really our gut microbiome is the base or the foundation of our health, because when we have gut problems, they tend to show up on other areas, notably our skin, but also our immune system will be weak, so we might get sick more often. Our mood could be off. There's a connection between our mental health and our gut microbiome. So the health of our gut is really super duper important. And whenever we're dealing with health challenges, especially skin challenges, the first place you want to look at is your gut.
That is so fascinating. So, how do the gut and skin connect?
So it's actually the gut, brain, and skin. So you may have heard it called the gut, brain, skin axis, or the gut, brain, skin connection, or gut skin connection. And basically all this refers to is the fact that these three organs are in constant two-way communication. So what happens in one of these organs affects the other. So if you've ever been embarrassed and you've blushed, that's an example of your brain affecting your skin. Or maybe when you were nervous, you lost your appetite, right? So it's all connected. And when it comes to something like acne, what the research shows is that people with acne tend to lack certain lactobacillus and bifidobacteria in their gut. They tend to be more constipated than people who have clear skin. They tend to lack gut microbiome diversity, and they tend to be more likely to have what's known as leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability. So there's really there's a very strong connection between our gut and our skin.
That's really cool. And I think a lot of people don't realize that what goes into our body affects the outside, our outside glow as much as the topicals, or maybe even on a deeper level. So would you say, because I know you mentioned like with the constipation that can lead to acne, is that because of the toxins like re-entering the bloodstream, or is it just an overall distress issue?
Well, the constipation is likely linked to the hormones. So we know that hormones play a role in acne, and they play a role in the oiliness of our skin. And so what appears to be happening is that, like, especially like people who break out, women who break out around their period or their cycle, it may be due, there could be various reasons, but it may be due to the fact that their body's not clearing excess hormones properly. So there could be an issue with the liver and breakdown, or it could be an issue with constipation because the liver breaks down the excess hormones and then packages them up to be excreted through the stool. And so if they're sitting around in your gut, and because you're constipated, those excess hormones can actually get reabsorbed back into the bloodstream, contributing to imbalances that can lead to breakouts. So that's that connection there.
That is, I actually did not know that. That's really cool. And I know for me, I've been really trying to hone in my own hormone health. I feel like things are pretty balanced. I don't get a lot of PMS, but just like a little bit of acne around the jawline and stuff that I'm like, okay, this is telling me that it's time to go deeper and work on this more, because I think that I really try to see acne and any physical manifestation of a negative symptom as a communication device, right? Versus just something that's ugly that I want to get rid of, which it kind of is that as well. But if we can start to look at these things as like our body communicating with us and showing us that something on the inside is off, then we can kind of shift that paradigm and get to true healing, which is kind of my philosophy.
Exactly. And that's why I always tell people, I know it doesn't seem like it when you're going through it, but acne is actually a blessing in disguise because you can see it on your face. So you're more likely to go out and do something and search for the answer. And, when the topical stuff doesn't work, try to go a little bit deeper and work on the internal stuff. And that is really a blessing, because sometimes when people have inflammation or imbalances in their body, it's silent because it's inside. So you don't really know what's happening. And, it can just progress and then, down the line get even worse. So really just hang in there. If you're struggling with acne, you can, if you figure out the root cause and get to the bottom of it, not only will you help clear your skin, but you're going to improve your overall health as well.
I love that approach. Everything is so connected. I mean, our body is one whole, not separate parts working completely individually and, away from each other. It really
Exactly.
does all work together. Okay, so I'm really curious. I'm sure you've seen lots of like acne maps floating around on the internet of like, if you get a zit here, it's sugar. If it's here, it's hormone gut. Is there a lot of credibility to those maps, or what do you think about those?
So those face maps come from traditional Chinese medicine, which I am a huge fan of. I think traditional Chinese medicine is fascinating and can be really, really helpful for so many different conditions. And what the face maps are, they're kind of based on observations versus like, I don't think there's ever been a study done to like verify if this is this or this or that. But I will say kind of universally, the hormonal acne, like even a Western doctor will tell you it's typically that, on that lower half of the face, like the jawline. And so that I would say is pretty, like, we know that's pretty good. But in terms of like the other areas, I think there probably is some truth to it because again, Chinese medicine is like thousands of years of observation and sort of testing, right? And so I think there's some validity to it. But what I will say is that I do think that there are some common underlying factors that, there are many different factors that contribute to acne, but they all kind of go back to inflammation, and inflammation typically starts in the gut. So even, for example, with hormonal acne, people think that you need to manipulate the hormones when really maybe you need to improve the gut health, or maybe you need to keep your blood sugar more stable with a low glycemic diet, right? And things like that, like working on your food or working on your gut health can actually help to rebalance the hormones versus, in the Western medical world, if there's a hormonal imbalance, typically you will take a pill to balance the hormones. And I feel like that's just a Band-Aid approach that's not really getting to the root of the problem. And that's why then things tend to persist longer term.
Yeah. And ultimately, I know I've even been in this boat back in college when I was getting some hormonal acne from birth control. And they put me on spironolactone. And so then looking at that, I was a little nervous because there were a lot of like long-term liver effects. And so then hearing what you have to say, okay, so this might help while taking the drug, right? But then if it's harming my liver when I get off of it, now my body won't be breaking down those hormones as well, right? And then that acne will remanifest essentially. Is that correct?
Well, that's kind of what happens for so many people. I mean, I know for myself as well, and just, I mean, so many people. I think the average length of time, I may be skewing these numbers slightly, but for like a teenager, like the average length of time, like someone has acne is like 10 years or something like that, like, going into the 20s and stuff. And for an adult, I don't want to say the numbers because I can't remember the study right now. I haven't slept in 4 months with a newborn and like, so thank you. But anyway, people are struggling with acne, not for like weeks or months, but for years and sometimes even decades. I know like I've had clients who literally are in their 40s and they've had acne since they're a teenager and like, have tried all the things. And so it's just really important that we are getting to the root of the problem, because for many people, when you go on the drug, whatever drug it is, whether it's antibiotics or a birth control or a spironolactone or whatever, yes, your skin clears up while you're taking the drug. But very often once you go off of it, and there is going to time that you're going to have to come off of it, the acne often comes back. Maybe not immediately, but like for example, with antibiotics, typically within 6 months to a year. With birth control, it typically comes back a lot sooner. So you're basically just putting that Band-Aid on when you're taking the pill. And look, some people, their skin clears, and I'm so happy for those people, and that is great. But I think for a lot of people, it just comes back, and then it goes on to, typically you'll try the next medication on that totem pole. But I feel like it's become sort of a hamster wheel, and again, your skin clears for a little while, then it gets, worse again, or it gets worse before it gets better. Like it's a whole thing. And I think really we just need to look deeper and figure out what is the source of inflammation, because this is actually something that most people don't realize. Acne is not a bacterial infection. Everyone thinks acne is a bacterial infection. It's a chronic inflammatory skin disorder. So inflammation is the primary problem with acne. Now, bacteria may play a role, but they're not the primary problem. Like, they're kind of the scapegoat. And so we need to figure out what's causing the inflammation. And what makes it a little bit challenging is that there are so many different things that can cause inflammation in the body, from nutrient deficiencies to pro-inflammatory diet to eating too much sugar, to a hormone imbalance, to gut imbalances. So there's so many things. Stress. We're a very stressful society. There's so many things going on, and people's emotions and things, like everyone's like stressed all the time. We're so busy. We have packing so much into our life. We have social media telling us we need to be perfect. Like, there's just so much going on. Everyone's always stressed. So all of these things can actually contribute to our inflammation in the body. And so we need to figure out for each individual, what are your key triggers and how do we remedy that with diet and lifestyle changes?
Yeah, that is so crazy. I mean, inflammation can come from literally so many things, not just diet, not just a pill, like over exercising, stress, like you're saying, all these different things, toxins in the
Not
home.
sleeping.
Yes, sleep is so important. So when you're working with a client and you're in this kind of exploratory phase, what does that look like?
So I definitely like to look at a food diary and see what people are eating, and also see how they're pooping. That is another important factor. And then take a bit of a health history and kind of understand, when did the acne start, what changed at this time, and also try to understand their day-to-day life, like what's going on. And then kind of piecing that all together, coming up with a hypothesis for, okay, maybe this, and this, maybe you should test for this, maybe test for this nutrient deficiency, or test your blood sugar levels, or test whatever, test your gut health. And then we also will introduce some dietary changes and some lifestyle changes kind of based on, what they need the most.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like your clients are in really good hands, because you're not just giving them a one size fits all plan. You're really learning their lifestyle. And I think so many people don't realize that, like, what works for one person might be different for somebody else, because it all has to do with our individual physiology, lifestyle, goals, etc. And I really try to preach that as well, obviously in more of the biohacking wellness space. So I know you mentioned with antibiotics how it can clear acne while you're taking it, and then increase inflammation and it comes back later. So for somebody, let's say they're taking antibiotics for a reason other than acne, or for whatever reason, if they do have a bacterial infection like strep or something, how can they mitigate some of those aftershock effects on the gut when they take antibiotics?
That's a great question. So actually, just to kind of back up, so when people take antibiotics, typically, like, we originally thought that the reason that their acne was clearing was because of the antimicrobial effects, but actually the class of antibiotics that are used for acne are also anti-inflammatory. So that is more likely what is causing the improvement. And then once they go off of that, now their gut microbiome has less diversity in their gut. Probably a good deal of the good strains have also been wiped out, depending especially on the length of time that people are taking it. And typically with acne, they're taking it for several months. And so the health of the gut has taken a hit, and then that can create inflammation in the body, and then that's why acne can come back, and often with a vengeance. But let's say, okay, yeah, there are times when we need to take antibiotics, right? If you have an infection, ideally you want to take the shortest course possible to be effective for your condition. You also just want to make sure that you're taking it for a real need versus, antibiotics are overprescribed. They're prescribed for things that are not bacterial infections. And so if you have a virus, let's say, then taking an antibiotic is not going to help you. And so you want to limit your antibiotic usage to when necessary. But okay, let's say that you do have to take it. Then there are a couple of things you could do. One, I would lay off the sugar, because the sugar is just going to exacerbate any issues with the gut and the inflammation in there, and it's not great for the gut microbiome. So I would try as much as possible to eat as healthy, whole real foods as possible. Make sure you're eating plenty of vegetables and fiber, cooked, like nice soups and stews, which are easy to digest on the gut, and taking probiotics. I think that's really a must, because we need to reintroduce those good bacteria back into the gut, especially those lactobacillus and bifidobacteria strains. And oftentimes when, the doctor writes a prescription for antibiotics, they'll also say, take this probiotic, or, make sure you're taking probiotics as well, because it does make a difference.
Amazing. Yeah, I can attest to that. It's definitely made a huge difference. And even in things like bloating, just having the good bacteria in there, which leads to my next question. So there are so many probiotics on the market. You walk into the grocery store and there's like a whole shelf and a fridge section. And I think people can get lost in knowing how to shop smart for their probiotics. So are all probiotic supplements the same? And if not, like what makes them different?
Yeah, so they're definitely not the same. Definitely not the same. So there's a whole host of things that you want to look for. So I think, first of all, you want to think about why you're taking the probiotic. So are you taking it just for general gut health? Are you taking it because, you want to improve your skin health, or your mood, or your immunity, whatever it is, your women's health? Like, probiotics are also super beneficial for anyone with like vaginal issues, like chronic UTIs or chronic yeast infections, which can sometimes come from taking antibiotics. There are certain strains that are best suited for each of these different issues. And so you want to think about, okay, why am I taking this probiotic? What are the benefits I want? And then choosing the probiotics that contain the strains that are going to be most beneficial for you. So that's number one. Number two, ideally, you want to look for probiotics that are using clinically validated strains. So those are the ones that have typically like letters or numbers at the end of them, like L. acidophilus, LA14, or L. rhamnosus, SP1. So it's those letters or numbers at the end that are going to indicate that this is a clinically validated strain. So you could even look up studies on this strain and see what it's good for. And most probiotics are using generic strains, so you may or may not get like the intended benefit that you're looking for, because it's not clinically tested. Another thing that you'd want to look for is the CFU count. So when you have clinically validated strains, they're going to, like the studies, they're going to explain what is the amount of the probiotic that was used in order to get this effect. Because maybe, certain strains, they'll be efficacious at 1 billion, others, maybe it's 10 billion, right? And so you want to make sure that you're getting the right dose for whatever benefit that you're seeking. So looking also for a product the product itself is clinically validated, which I would say is less than 1% of supplement companies will actually send their probiotic out to be clinically tested to see what the results are. So looking for a clinically tested probiotic, I think, would be really important, so you can see the results and make sure that they're using, a CFU count that is suitable. Another tricky thing with the CFU count, sometimes what probiotic companies will do is they'll put a really high number on the front of the bottle, like 50 billion CFU, which sounds like this is amazing. But when you flip it over, you'll read that it says, like, there's a little asterisk and it says at time of manufacture. So what that means is that they put in 50 billion at time of manufacture, but you're definitely not getting 50 billion in your serving, the one that's in your hand right now, because the manufacturing process is going to kill off some of those bacteria, the transport, the type of bottle that it's in. So for example, plastic bottles are not as great of a barrier against light and oxygen compared to glass bottles, let's say. And so the glass bottle probiotics are actually the glass bottle is going to keep your probiotics more potent and fresher longer than those in the plastic bottle. So there's all these kind of things. So ideally, the way I prefer probiotics is that the number on the bottle is the number that you're getting, so that the manufacturer is making sure that you are getting that clinically efficacious dose, even if you have the bottle, 6 months after it was produced, Mm-hmm. And so, so making sure that there is more transparency in terms of the CFU counts. And then lastly, that whole refrigerated versus non-refrigerated. So back in the day, like 10 years ago, everyone would say, okay, you need to have a refrigerated probiotic. in order to make sure it's efficacious. But that's actually not true anymore, because there have been a lot of advancements in probiotics. And so now you can get these shelf-stable probiotic strains that don't necessarily need to be refrigerated. And I would actually say those are better, because if a probiotic can't live, outside the refrigerator, how is it going to survive your stomach acid? So
Yeah.
yeah. And then I guess that'll bring me to the last point, is you also want to look for a delayed release capsule, ideally, or a delayed release delivery method, to help ensure that the maximum amount of probiotics are making it past your stomach acid into your gut where they are needed.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy, because I really do feel for people who are trying to do something for their health. And there are so many options out there, and most of them are not what they claim to be. So it can be really frustrating. It can be hard for people who are just trying to do something good and spend their money on something good for them. And there's a lot of tricky lingo and marketing, and it's lack of regulation that can cause people to spend their money on things that are not actually having the desired effect. So I love that you have kind of the information and people can learn from that, because it can be really confusing walking into a store or going online and trying to do your own research when you don't have direction. So, okay, so kind of with that, all that information, I would love for you to tell my audience about Glow Biome. I know I've personally taken it and I've loved it. Like, it's been incredible. So for those of you guys listening, Glow Biome is Maria's amazing probiotic, and it is just incredible for skin and gut. So would you mind introducing that?
Yeah, so Glow Biome is a probiotic that I formulated specifically for acne-prone skin to help target it from the inside out. So we use 6 clinically validated strains that target that gut-skin connection, and we designed it to support bloating, to support regularity, to support healthier digestion, but also to support clearer skin. And like I had mentioned earlier, it was really important for us because I'm a research junkie. Like anything, like I'm like always in the weeds with things, like really researching the heck out of everything. And so I wanted to make sure that this product worked. And so we came up with the formula, and then we sent it out to be tested. So we had a clinical trial with 30 participants who had acne, and they took the product for 30 days, and they weren't allowed to, change anything about their diet, and their skincare was just all gentle, like non-medicated skincare. And the results were amazing. After about 90 days, we saw, a reduction in the number and like severity of breakouts. We saw a reduction of excess oil, so the sebum kind of normalized, and even an increase in skin hydration. So it's really incredible. And I think the future of skincare is probiotics. You're starting to see them topically in skincare, but really, because the healthiest skin starts with the healthiest gut, you're going to see, more and more of this. And I really think that we formulated the best product for skin.
That's amazing. And yeah, I love it. I took it while traveling. I think I shared this with you a while ago, or shared with someone on your team. I took it in Europe last year. And I feel like, most people kind of get bloated when they fly, when they're eating. I mean, I'm not a big drinker. I'm a very healthy eater. But like when I travel, yeah, I'll have the espresso martinis and, all the bread and cheese and things that I don't necessarily normally eat. And I felt amazing. I mean, my skin was clear. I was never bloated. Everything was amazing. And that was with, all the flying and the traveling and trains and everything. And I was just beyond impressed. So it's the real deal. And I love your branding too. It's so feminine and beautiful, where so many supplements can be a little bit like look a little more clinical. I do love that it's a fun supplement to have in your shelf.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I'm glad it was so helpful. I do remember you, sharing that with us, and it's amazing. I even say, like, sometimes people are scared of vegetables, which are so healthy for us, and they're like, "Oh, I can't eat vegetables because I get so bloated," or "I can't eat beans because I get so bloated." And the problem is not the vegetable or the bean. Typically the problem is in the gut, because you don't have what you need to break down that food properly. And so taking probiotics, over a period of time can actually help you break those down and not bloat when you eat broccoli or beans. And it's pretty amazing feeling, actually. Like, it's nice to be able to eat what you want and not have to deal with bloating.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so connected. I mean, oftentimes it makes me so sad to see, I'm sure you've probably heard the quote that goes around the internet about hot girls having gut issues or hot girls having IBS. And it makes me sad because ultimately there is a better way and it's available to all of us. We just need the tools and the willingness to do it. And, I want to rebrand it and, say that hot girls claim their health and hot girls take the steps they need to feel amazing.
I love that. Yeah, hot girls figure out their root cause. Hot girls,
Yes.
yeah, for sure.
Yes, hot girls are healing their issues, not just living with it. And I saw, this is so cool, but Alex Earl was using Glow Biome, which
Yeah.
I thought was so crazy. Was that just wild to see, like someone famous
Yes.
using your product?
Yes. So a friend actually sent me her TikTok and she's like, oh my God, she's using Olive. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I didn't know. I do know that she goes to, we're stocked at a few different spas across the US because, estheticians love our product because it's great to use in tandem, with the facials. And so it is stocked at MDR Skin in Miami, which she goes there to see Marissa for acne facials, and so I'm sure Marissa gave her or told her to get the product, and so yeah, it was super cool to see that and that she shared it.
Yeah. Well, and she's been one thing I do like about her is she has been so honest and open with her skin journey, where I think a lot of influencers can be very glossy. And if they do have these struggles, just edit them out. So I
Yeah.
do appreciate somebody who has such a large platform sharing the journey, because then that also does bring a level of credibility. Like she's working on her skin, she's using her product. It's pretty incredible to see. So that is amazing. Where can people buy Glow Biome if they're interested?
So you can get it directly from our website, which is kumaglow.co. So that's KUMAGLOW.co. The company is KUMA, and KUMA wasn't available, so it's kumaglow.co.
Amazing. I love it. It does give you the glow, so it's perfect. So I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, so then I know probiotics are an amazing thing to take. And then of course in our day-to-day, we want to be dialing in our diet. And I know you are just the expert on how to eat your way to beautiful skin. So would you mind taking us through just a general list of foods you love or diet tips that you have for people who want beautiful skin?
Yeah, so I would say first and foremost, let's focus on what you're adding in versus what you're taking out. Because yes, sugar, like it's not, breaking news. Everyone knows sugar is not great for our health and it's definitely not great for our skin. But before we get there, let's focus on what we're adding in first. So add in those fiber-rich and vitamin-rich vegetables. In particular, I would say dark leafy greens and any sort of orange like vegetables. So carrots, sweet potato, butternut squash. These kinds of things are going to be the best for acne-prone skin because they tend to contain the nutrients that people with acne are lacking. And so those are really great. I also love seeds like flaxseed, chia seed, hemp seed, and walnuts. These are a source of omega-3 fatty acids, which again, they're often lacking in people with acne. People across the board, omega-3 is a very common deficiency across the board. And omega-3 is also really important for our mental health as well. And a lot of times like acne and mental health, issues go hand in hand. And so interestingly, there's that overlap with that gut piece in terms of, having gut dysbiosis. And then also there's overlap in terms of nutrient deficiencies. So I think, it's really important that you're addressing, and this is another reason why it's important that you're addressing acne, from the food and lifestyle, because it's going to just help overall across the board mood as well, and gut health as well, all the things. So what else? I would say wild salmon. That's another food that I love for acne-prone skin. And again, just in general, because that's a great source of omega-3. It also contains some vitamin D, which again, people are usually lacking in. And berries, anything antioxidant rich, the blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, all of these things are great. And I will say, because now we're going into winter, so these things are not really in season. You could switch up to things that are in season. The antioxidant rich foods like pomegranate is in season now. That's a wonderful, food to have. Citrus is coming in. And so, there's I do like the idea of eating seasonally as well. I think that's really important because when we eat seasonally and locally, we tend to get foods that are more nutritious. And that's really like important, is that we're making sure that we're eating really nutrient dense foods.
Yeah. That is, and I love the seasonal and local as well. I did actually have been learning more about that and how our bodies kind of prepare themselves to eat what's in season. So when you do that, it can be really nutritious and your body knows what to do with the food better. And I was like, what the heck? That's so crazy how intelligent our bodies are. And I find that so fascinating. And I love your philosophy of focusing on what you're adding in versus taking out, because I think also when you're eating enough of the right stuff, you're going to be more satiated and not filling up on the other stuff, just kind of as a natural byproduct. Like, for instance, with protein, a lot of the girls will ask me, how do I increase my protein intake? And I'm like, just eat your protein first, because then you'll eat the other stuff until you're full, but you're going to naturally be more satiated on what you're trying to build in your diet versus the other things and then trying to add more in. So I love that. Okay, so one common food that I see that people tend to say breaks them out a lot is gluten. What's your philosophy on gluten?
Yeah, so gluten, we know that it has an impact on the guts and it can increase intestinal permeability, which we talked about is, people who have increased intestinal permeability are more likely to have acne. So they're not going crazy or something. Like it is, something that is seen. And so basically, yeah, it can be creating inflammation. So if gluten is not sitting well with you and it's disrupting your gut, so if you get also bloated after it, have digestive issues, loose stools, like that's like a sure sign. But you may not even have very strong symptoms. You may not have what you deem like digestive symptoms. Sometimes you can have just like a runny nose after consuming the food, or maybe a headache or brain fog, things like that. So it's not always a digestive issue that's presenting first. And so, yes, if you have a sensitivity to gluten, then it could be creating inflammation in your body, which is ultimately breaking you out. So that's why when someone comes to me and they are breaking out and they're eating gluten, I think it is a good idea to try an elimination diet, and even, elimination and reintroduction, to see if it is, part of the problem. And then I think it also makes it easier for people to then, like, if gluten is a problem for them, then to like actually stick to leaving it out of their diet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I hear that so often. So do you think that sourdough is a better option for people, or just eliminating it in general? Like, I guess I hear so many different things, and I was like, I would love to hear from the expert.
Yeah, so like sourdough is commonly believed to be better, and I do believe it is better than, just a regular bread. However, if you have a gluten sensitivity, it's probably not the best thing, but it's all like a spectrum, and
Yeah.
it also depends on how, like, the state of your gut health. So if you are in a state now where you do have digestive issues and you have acne and you have all these problems and you have the inflammation, I do think it is a good idea to eliminate it, at least for a period of time, while you work on healing your gut and sealing that gut lining, improving that. And so once you do that and your gut is in a better place, you'll likely find that you can tolerate a little bit of gluten, and so you could have it from time to time. You probably still don't want to go back to having it every day, every meal, because you're going to end up with the same issues again, but your tolerance increases. So I would say, if you have a sensitivity, I would skip even the sourdough and go to a gluten-free option. They have gluten-free sourdoughs, and they have all these different, some are better than others, but I think now in 2024, we have a lot of great gluten-free options. I would stick with that again for that period of time to really work on healing your gut for at least 3 months, 6 months. It really depends, like, the state of your gut. Like, it could take years also before you really start working in a little bit of gluten.
That makes sense too, because I mean, when you're fully inflamed, everything's going to set you off, right? Your body, your immune system, your body, the inflammation, everything's going to be kind of on high alert. Versus if you can get your body to calm down, get that inflammation down, you're, living more in a parasympathetic state internally, then it's not going to be like this constant onslaught of triggers. So that
Right.
that makes a lot of sense. And I think that that can be the hard thing, is taking that initial time to eliminate things, especially when it's like the foods that are so good. But ultimately, if you can see it as a season and as a stepping stone for overall healing, not just your skin, it can be a really beautiful thing. So do you say, like, fermented foods in general, are there something that you like to see people increase in their diet?
I love fermented foods. Yeah, fermented foods are great for most people because, again, I think we all, there's definitely foods that are generally healthy, right, for most people, but there's always going to be some caveat, right, that for some
Yeah.
people this is not great. But for most people, adding in fermented foods is a fabulous thing to do. They are a natural source of probiotics. And there's so many different types of fermented foods. So you could do sauerkraut, you could do kimchi, tempeh, miso. There's so many different things, all different sorts of pickled vegetables. I think the tricky thing sometimes is finding traditionally fermented foods versus just these quick pickled foods. So a lot of times you'll see pickles, but they're quick pickled. So if you see vinegar in the label, in the ingredient list, that means it's quick pickled. So it tastes like it's fermented, but it's not actually fermented. So you're not going to get those probiotic benefits. So that is one tip, is when you are purchasing fermented foods, make sure when you read the ingredient list, there's no vinegar in it. And it just says, cabbage and salt, basically, or maybe there's some spices in there and you're getting it from the refrigerator section.
Okay, that's really good to know. Yeah, of course, a lot of industrial foods are going to take those those shortcuts that make it less beneficial. And then, of course, pickling things yourself it takes time, but it's not that hard. I've never done it, but my mom actually just went to a sauerkraut making party and fermented it for a month, and it was divine. It was so good. I was eating on everything. So that's always a fun thing to do as well.
That is so cool. I've never heard of
You?
that before, but I feel like I need to have one now.
I
I've
know.
experimented a little bit. Like, I've made some batches that have been so good. And then I've also made batches where, you take one wrong step and then it becomes moldy and stuff.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful what you're doing. But it's actually not that hard. It's just a matter of doing it. And because the grocery stores stock everything these days, we just don't make foods anymore. We don't do this, which a couple of generations ago everybody would be doing this in their home. And so, I think I love this idea of doing a sauerkraut party or kimchi party.
Oh my gosh, I would come out. I think it's really important for us to connect with our food. We're so disconnected. Everything comes in a box or in a package or at a restaurant, and there's something really beautiful about us connecting with the ingredients. We can obviously control the ingredients, but then we build a deeper understanding for food and nutrition. Which I think is fascinating. I have so many questions about all the skin stuff, because I know these are all the questions the girls are going to have for me. So, vegan diet versus non-vegan diet, skin-wise, what do you see from vegans versus people who do incorporate meat into their diet?
So I do actually see a lot of vegans with acne because there are certain nutrients that are not super prevalent in the vegan diet, unless, again, you're eating like certain foods and you're being very particular and strategic about your vegan diet, which not people don't always do. Like, it depends on the reason that you're vegan, right? So if you're a vegan for animal rights, then you may not be as clued into, the nutritional aspect of your diet. And it's very easy to become deficient in certain nutrients. Like, for example, that omega-3, which we mentioned earlier, is so critical for clear skin. So I would just caution, I would say this across the board, is if you have acne and you think that you're eating healthy, you may not be. And you may be. It is possible, but there's so many of these restrictive diets these days that cut out whole food groups. And when you do that, it is easier to become nutrient deficient because certain foods contain certain nutrients. So if you're not eating a well-balanced plate and you kind of eat the same few foods, it is possible to become nutrient deficient. So definitely, even not for acne, if you're eating whatever you're eating a diet and you have some symptoms, some chronic issue, it's a good idea to, think with your body and not with your head, because sometimes we become so wrapped up with the idea of a diet being the healthiest diet or the best diet. But if our body, is showing us that it's not the best for us, it's a good idea to, to rethink it.
Yeah, and I think so much of that takes the ego out of things too, because
Yeah.
I know even for myself personally, I was vegan for 5 years and my skin was not happy. I mean, and I was also paired with an IUD, so my skin was really not happy. And I think the biggest thing for me, getting rid of those things, incorporating meat and eggs and all the animal-based protein back into my diet, going off of birth control, the biggest, hardest thing was not actually doing those things. It was admitting that maybe I was wrong for a while,
Hmm.
and not just admitting it to the world, but admitting it to myself, because that was kind of a death of ego. And
Yeah.
I think it can be hard. Sometimes the hardest thing about these things is we have been told certain things by other people, by media, by society, and we want to believe them. We internalize them, and it becomes part of our identity. And then having to change the way we eat, which is so personal. It's literally how we're giving our body raw materials to build our cells. It take a little bit of death to ego. I know it did for me personally, but changing my diet and lifestyle has been so empowering and so beneficial in every way, not just skin, but strength, energy, metabolism, and all these things really do kind of just come together beautifully.
Hmm.
But I love what you said about, if something's not working, don't assume you're eating healthy, because we do kind of have to sometimes be able to admit that maybe we were doing something wrong in order to get to the other side when things are just so much better and happier. So it can be a death to ego, but it's ultimately so worth it when you do it. And yeah, I think that people don't realize how many micronutrients and macronutrients they can be missing in that diet. So I
Yeah.
love what you have to say about that. Do you have recommendations for specific animal-based proteins that you recommend for skin?
I mean, I definitely love seafood. I think seafood is a great source of those omega-3s of certain, like the fattier fish. So salmon, mackerel, anchovy, sardines, things like that are great for the skin. I do, like red meat is fine. Like whatever animal protein floats your boat is great. I would caution against too much chicken because chicken is naturally higher in omega-6. So that you want to, you can have chicken, but make sure it's not your only protein source. Because sometimes people end up eating chicken every single day for like, 2 meals a day. And, you want to rotate, as with all things, with your vegetables, with your fruit, with everything, you want to always rotate them. And you don't want to get into the rut of eating those same few foods all of the time, which is like that gym culture, right? It's like
Yes.
chicken and broccoli every single day. You need variety. You need variety to make sure that you're getting everything that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so real. The meal prep chicken rice broccoli culture is very real. I'm like, man, that just doesn't entice me. I want to eat something delicious and different every day. But that is very real, because it can be hard to have inspiration to try something new when something is so easy and accessible and you know it so well. Okay,
Yeah.
so then I guess my last question regarding diet would be, so if we're taking probiotics, a lot of people don't know a lot about prebiotics and postbiotics and how to kind of create that beautiful environment for the probiotic to thrive. Can you shed a little bit of light on these?
Yeah. So probiotics are the good bacteria in the gut. Prebiotics are basically, you can think of them as the fuel or the food for the probiotics, because the probiotics use the prebiotics to make the postbiotics, which are kind of the end products that support our health, like short chain fatty acids, for example. And this is where the health benefits are going to come from. So, in order to really maximize the benefits of probiotics, you do want to combine them with prebiotics. So, like for example, Globiome does have probiotics and prebiotics, but you also want to eat your prebiotic foods. You want to eat your fiber. And that's where those beautiful vegetables and fruit, right, and those plant-based foods come in, is because they're a great source of fiber that are going to feed those good bacteria.
Amazing. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that we can actually support our probiotics through our diet. I mean, we can be so disconnected. We take a pill and it's better. And I love that your supplement does have the prebiotics as well. But yeah, it's so important to eat those things. And then I've been reading a bit about like herbs and polyphenols and that how that can support probiotics. Do you have any information regarding that?
Yeah, so polyphenols can actually serve as a prebiotic. And so they're going to basically feed your good gut bacteria and help them, proliferate. And so polyphenol rich foods like, your berries, your pomegranate, which we mentioned earlier. These are great for gut health.
Amazing. Yeah, I've been trying really hard to incorporate more and even like rosemary and thyme and these polyphenol rich herbs into cooking. Um, I mean, and it's so tasty. I mean, these foods are truly so flavor rich, especially when you do eliminate a lot of the processed foods and kind of resensitize your palate. These things are just beautiful bursts of flavor. So it's fun, but it also has so many benefits. I'm really hoping that people can, listen to this episode and leave with some really easy takeaways. And I think that they will, just having those diet recommendations, understanding that maybe their acne isn't about the products they're putting on their skin as much as it's about something at a really deep root cause that we can work on, healing at a deeper level. And then something I always love to ask the experts, because I think it does help humanize people that, we can put on a pedestal in the health world or on social media. What are your specific health goals in your life?
My health goals. Well, right now I'm 4 months postpartum.
Congrats.
So thank you. Yeah. So I just want to, I will say that I've achieved one so far, which is I feel like I've gotten my ab strength back to a point where I can like actually sit up, because when you're pregnant and like post pregnancy, your abs are just kind of like super stretched out. So you can't like lay down and get up the same way that you used to. So now I'm able to do that again. So I'm happy I achieved that, but I still have a little further to go. So right now I'm working on my fitness and I'm working out with a trainer. So I'm working on that, just kind of like getting my body, I don't want to say like bounce back, because I think my body is perhaps never going to be the same. It's not going to be the same as it was before, but it's created such a miracle and it's going to be better, And so I just want to kind of like move forward, but work on my fitness. So working out with a trainer. Other health goals, I will say I really need to get my meditation practice and breathwork practice to be more consistent, because I'm not super consistent with it. So my goal is to like really do that, because I'm not sleeping well with the baby waking up a couple times a night. So I need to really make sure I'm lowering my stress, in other ways. So that's my other goal. And I guess a third goal that I'm working on health-wise, is I'm trying to reverse my gray hair. So that, I don't know if you saw me post about that on Instagram.
No, but I'd love to learn more. That's incredible.
Yeah. So I kind of started this pre-pregnancy, but basically with graying hair, just like acne, there are many different possible root causes. But one of them, a few of them are like having too many heavy metals in the body, lacking certain minerals, lacking circulation, because we're always kind of on our phone and our heads are down, we can end up kind of getting blocks and like tight shoulders, and the blood flow is restricted to the scalp. So that could also be preventing oxygen and nutrients from going to the scalp. And stress. So all these things can contribute to gray hair. So basically I've been working on all of these things, detoxing heavy metals, making sure I'm having, enough minerals, and working on like scalp massage and all these things. And I've actually, my hair, I have a few gray hairs. They've started reversing. They started like coming in their natural color. So yes, so that's the other thing. I just want to get rid of all the gray hairs. So I have some more to go.
That's amazing. Okay, when you said posture, the way I sat up straight, I was like, okay, because I can be so bad about that. But that's crazy. I think so many of us just kind of accept graying hair at some point as something that's just part of life, and I'm sure it's somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
But the idea that you can actually reverse it with lifestyle is incredible. And I know I have a lot of women like in their obviously 20s, but then in their 30s and 40s that watch my content and listen to it, and this might be their sign that lifestyle, work on that posture, work on your stress, get your minerals in your diet. I know I'm going to be doing all those things preventatively. That's incredible.
Yeah, I have a whole highlight reel on my Instagram, if anyone wants to check it out. But yeah, it's super interesting, and there is even science behind it. So it's pretty cool. And I think that just like with the acne or anything else, if you have those few gray hairs, it's just a communication from your body. And it's a matter of like looking under the hood a little bit and trying to figure out, okay, what's going on and how can I remedy that?
That's amazing. Yeah. I just spoke with a naturopath for the show as well. And I was asking her, I was like, okay, so are we inflamed because are we deteriorating because we're aging, or are we aging because we're deteriorating like in our lifestyle? And she's like, no, we're aging because we're inflamed and stressed and unhealthy. There's so much we can do. And it's not just a vain thing. There's so much we can do just to increase our longevity and feel amazing for longer. And I love that. I've never heard of reversing graying hair before. And you can bet after this interview, I'm going to expeditiously watch your highlight and start researching this because that's amazing.
Yeah, and I will just add, like, I think gray hair is beautiful. Like, when you have a full head of gray hair, I think it's actually stunning. And I remember when I was growing up, one of my mom's friends, she had like this whole head of, I used to call it like silver hair. And I thought she was so elegant and stunning. But when you just have like a few of them like popping out when you put your hair back,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's just a sign, and it's kind of like, again, that blessing in disguise to kind of like look a little deeper and then just improve what you can with your diet and lifestyle.
Amazing. Yeah, I think the takeaway here is our bodies are very intelligent communication. I don't want to say devices. I'm looking for a better word than that. But, our bodies have ways of communicating with us. We just have to tune in and be willing to listen and hear and get curious about what our body is saying, because it's speaking in a language that we don't always understand unless we are tuning in. So I think that's honestly a major takeaway of today is just be curious. Don't assume that everything is how it is because that's just the way it is, right? If there's something happening in our bodies that we don't like that we're seeing, there's often something we can do on the inside level to not just mitigate that, but to really find freedom from it. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about taking the power of our health back. I know I'm very inspired after this conversation. I was so excited to speak to you because I knew that we were going to get so much good wisdom for just health on an inside out level. So would you mind sharing, before we close out, would you mind sharing where people can find you, if they want to work with you or get in touch with you, just all of the things?
Sure, yeah. So the best place is probably my website, which is mariamarlowe.com, and Marlowe is spelled Marlowe. And also Instagram, I'm at Maria Marlowe. TikTok is Glow by Marlowe. TikTok and YouTube is Glow by Marlowe. Yeah, and so I have a lot of resources. Like my social media and my website are just treasure trove of information about skin health, gut health, that gut skin connection, and reversing gray hair now, because I get tons of questions about that. And there's also some recipes on the website and a clear skin plan, which is like a great also starting point for anyone struggling with acne. It helps you really figure out, the possible root causes and remedy that with diet and lifestyle. So
Amazing. Yeah, everyone reach out. And if you did learn something from Maria today, please make sure to screenshot this episode, share it, give her a tag, give me a tag as well, and just spread the word, because there's just so much that we can share to help women, men too. But, women have my heart as far as just wanting them to live with more vibrancy and confidence and health. So just make sure to give it a share because we want to get this word out there. Maria, thank you so much for joining me today. I had such a lovely time chatting with you.
thank you so much for having me.